Hello, and a very, very warm welcome to my YouTube today. My name's Chris, and I'm going to take a look at the de Havilland Comet. Now, this follows on from my film about Group Captain John Cunningham. Well, he became de Havilland's chief test pilot. So we're going to take a look at the de Havilland Comet, but more importantly, I wanted to focus on the future that the de Havilland Comet had, and in fact was in military service up until the late 1970s. It's a very interesting story, and we'll start by looking at a misty early December morning in 1955. Chief Test Pilot John Cunningham settled into the pilot seat of the prototype de Havilland DH-106 Comet 3, Golf Alpha November Lima Oscar, with Per Borge alongside him in the cockpit. They'd been due to depart at 5:30 a.m, but a thick fog had settled like a winter blanket over Hatfield Aerodrome in Hertfordshire, and the two men were forced to wait patiently for a while. This was no time to take risks. R.W. Chandler was the navigator radio operator. Other crew members, including Chief Flight Engineer E. Braxton Brown and Flight Engineers R.V. Ablett and J. Hamilton. Several de Havilland executives and engineers were among the passengers. Captain A.P.W. Kane of the British Overseas Airway Corporation and Captain I.D.V. Ralph of Qantas were aboard to observe the very first circumnavigation of the globe by a jet-powered aircraft. The passengers thought that their names may not be familiar, but they formed a discerning clientele, and there was a lot for de Havilland to prove. And so it came to be, and with some trepidation, when he came to pilot this flight around the world, Group Captain John Cunningham was taking the first jet-powered flight to circumnavigate the globe under a glaring spotlight, and with all the eyes not just on the plane but on him too. And despite his disdain for media attention, Cunningham was undeniably the man for the job. His exceptional track record, his skill, passion for flight and calm-headed outlook were the perfect match for the redesigned Comet and the challenge of the ground-breaking flight ahead. And during my film, I've got some footage here of the extensive testing that was carried out on the Comet.
To support the investigations on the ground, an operational BOAC Comet, Able Victor, was subjected to an extensive series of flight tests. Never before has an aircraft been so extensively equipped. The passenger cabin was stripped of unnecessary furnishings and fitted with recording instruments. Electrical resistance strain gauges recorded in flight the dynamic and steady loads at 60 measuring points in the aircraft. The crew were briefed before each flight. The pilots were RAF officers of our experimental flying department, and the observers were civilian officers belonging to our scientific staff. De Havilland flying personnel also took part in many of the flights. All civil aircraft are subjected to prolonged proving trials before they are introduced into service. We were looking for things outside the normal range of such tests. As the work on the ground went on, extra items were added to the flight test program to confirm the results of laboratory investigations. As a safety precaution, the aircraft was flown unpressurized, the crew and observers being provided with special parachutes and using oxygen above 10,000 feet. Signals from the strain gauges at the tailplane routes and at some of the outboard positions could be combined in various ways. For instance, port and starboard gauge signals could be added to give a measure of the symmetric tailplane load. Alternatively, the signals could be read separately when asymmetric loads were required. The aircrew and observers spent many tiring hours concentrating on their instruments. No chance of a smoke, but a peppermint helps. The maximum airspeed called for in the tests were 300 knots EAS and 0.8 Mach number, but these limits were not tested until late in the program. For the earlier flights, limits of 275 knots EAS and 0.7 Mach number were imposed. Structural vibrations were recorded and measurements concerned with the flying characteristics of the aircraft were made, together with the temperature of the engines and the cabin heating system.
The tests then continued. When the equivalent total life was about 4.5 times that of the Elba comet, a further failure occurred, a crack near a window developing rapidly, and the port side of the cabin was ripped open for a length of about 15 feet. This third failure confirmed that the structure around escape hatches and windows was vulnerable from the fatigue aspect. A series of laboratory tests were made to study fatigue stresses around a rivet hole, and specimens of aluminium alloy sheet, similar to those used in the Comet fuselage, were stressed in a fatigue testing machine 2,000 times per minute from 0 to 40,000 pounds per square inch. Under these stressing conditions, the specimen fractures in about 6 minutes. The examination of the Elba wreckage, which had proceeded simultaneously with the fatigue tests, indicated that failure started at a direction-finding aerial window in the roof of the cabin. There were 2 of these windows, and the failures originated from the rear one. On one side of the rear window, the failures run forward from a corner and pass through the front window. On the other side of the window, the failures run aft, so splitting the fuselage along the top center line. Under the action of the internal pressure, the 2 halves opened outwards, broke away, and were projected violently along the wings. There's a strong similarity between the failures in the wreckage and in the fatigue tank. When seen side by side, these failures provide a most striking demonstration of circumstantial evidence. All the structure in the region of the ADF aerial windows was microscopically examined, and strength test specimens were taken from the material. In one corner of the rear window, signs of fatigue were found. This direct evidence of fatigue, and the close similarity with the failures in the pressure cabin fatigue test, gives convincing evidence that the disruption of the pressure cabin was brought about by fatigue.
As the flight was completely successful, after that only 2 Comet 3s were built, and one was used as a static test article, and remained a development prototype, was modified several times before being turned over to the Ministry of Supply in 1961. Cunningham remained as chief test pilot with de Havilland until he finally retired in 1980. As it came to pass, the Comet 4 actually became quite successful, and Dan Air was the last airline to operate the de Havilland Comet commercially. They were the largest operator of the Comet, with a fleet of 49 aircraft. Dan Air utilised the Comet on inclusive charter flights primarily to the Mediterranean destinations, and the last commercial Comet flight was operated by Dan Air on November the 9th, 1980. Following the Comet C-2's withdrawal, 216 Squadron was reduced to just 5 flight crews. In many ways, the RAF Comet's career shadowed Britain's global decline, the fleet reducing as commitments east of Suez shrank, and on the June the 30th, 1975, the type finally retired from RAF service and 216 Squadron was disbanded. But the jet still had considerable airframe life remaining, and after a brief period of storage, Dan Air bought all 5 and converted them for use on regular passenger flights, something they continued well into the 1980s. Could I just say a massive thank you to all my new subscribers? It's really encouraging to receive your support, but please, to any new subscribers, it would be really appreciated if you too did subscribe as well, because I'm just trying to grow the channel, share the films around, because history for me is just such a fascinating topic. There's absolutely no hassle in subscribing. You don't get hounded by any subscriptions. It's absolutely cost-free. So please click on the old subscribe button, press the thumbs up, and just enjoy the films. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for watching along. I really hope you found this short film about the DH Comet interesting. It's been a delight to put together because I didn't really know how much utilisation the Comet got after all these disastrous crashes, and it's heartening to see that the Comet did actually fly on for many years and become a very successful aircraft. Take the greatest care and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers for now.